What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another retro format video and back with a cat format video, the first of my gameplay videos for it. I was planning on making some more before this, but I got a bit busy as I have been for the past while, so sorry for the paucity of videos, but this one should be a good one because this will go through my tournament run with the typical cat style deck. So this is the format that's named after this deck, SJC Indianapolis 2009, using March 2009 ban list. And this format is mainly dominated by a card in the extra deck, Darkstrike Fighter. This thing is absolutely insane. It's a generic level 7 synchro that lets you basically finish off your opponent after making a big push. So a thing that a lot of decks do in this format is they make a big sort of damage push, and then they just go into a Darkstrike Fighter after they do that, and they burn away the remainder of their opponent's life points. Now, an important thing to note is that this card was errated, so the version that you see on Dueling Book here is not actually the correct version. You can use its effect as many times as you want, and it does not have to be in main phase 1. So, yeah, this thing is absolutely cracked, and it's very, very good in a deck like Cat, which can make it very easily, because the goal of Cat is you play Summon Rung, pitch a spell, bring out a Rescue Cat, go into double Air Bellum, and then you've got a 3 plus a 4, and that makes a 7. You can also go into Arcanite Magician very easily, which is a level 7 spellcaster that needs to be made with a spellcaster monster, of which Summoner Monk is one, along with these Gravekeeper Spies and Gravekeeper Guard here as well, which is why they're in the deck. And this thing can selectively blow up parts of the board for you before you make your push. You've also got Black Rose Dragon access if you really want to, although this thing is not what you're typically going into, but it is something that you can make if you need to. For the rest of the extra deck, I'll go through this as I'm talking about it. We've got Blackwing Armwing and Blackwing Armmaster. We are playing one copy of Gale. This is very easily tutorable off of something like Sangan. It's also very good against Blackwing decks, of which there are a fair amount in this format. Blackwing's very good. And you will see some games against it later on in this video. But we can potentially, like Minecon or BrainCon, one of their Blackwings, special summon out Gale, go into the Armed Wing or go into the Armor Master quite easily. And these are both pretty powerful synchro monsters in their own right. For the others, we've got Colossal Fighter here, pretty good, level 8, that does come up a fair bit. Double Darkstrike Fighter, as I mentioned. We got Gaia Knight, Force of Earth, along with a Goya, because Goya is limited, so you can only play one of it, and Gaia Knight's really the only other 6 that you might go into. We've got Light End Dragon here. This is a tech that I added in. Dark End Dragon is also in the format, because we play by how Format Library defines it, and they say if a prize card's out, then it's in the format. So Dark End Dragon is something that could have also gone in this slot, but I figure you're more likely to go into Light End Dragon because you're more likely to have a level 5 Light than level 5 Dark. You can go into this with, like, more Dark monsters potentially, like, 3 plus... I don't even know, like, the combinations that you'd make with it, really. This deck doesn't really have those combinations as easily, but you could probably, like, construct one. But I feel like Light End, there's just more ways to go into it, because you got Magical Android in the extra deck as well, which you do go into a fair bit, because you go Airbellum plus Raikou off of a cat sometimes, and that does come up. So I figured Light End is just another option to have in the extra deck here. It's not the best thing in the world, but it is kind of neat. It can win battles against things and deal a fair bit of damage due to that. So I think this thing is not terrible. But it's definitely not like the best thing in the world. You don't go into this that often. I don't think I ever went into it in the tournament itself, but just something good to know about at least. Androids here as well, along with Red Dragon Archfiend, Stardust, and Thought Ruler each at 1. So you could potentially also sub out the Light End for an extra copy of one of the other ones here that I mentioned. I think honestly a third Arcanite might be a good thing to have in this deck, just because you go into Arcanites fairly frequently. But I think this is ultimately a pretty good extra deck, all things told. For the rest of the main deck, I've sort of gone over the main combo here. You also have Sangan to search out part of the combo. You've got Tomato to go into part of the combo as well. You've got these Spies and a Guard just to sort of like wall up a bit. Also just a level 4 for your Airbellums. And also, Guard is a Crush Card Virus target, which we do play in this deck because you've got Guard, you've got the Summoner Monks, you've got the Sangan. You got a fair amount of things that you can actually tribute off for the Crush Card. So that is pretty good. If you activate this thing, it can win against a lot of decks. So very, very good card. We've also got Sire Valley. This I'm kind of iffy on. I get why it's here. We play multiple Mind Comp. We play Cold Wave. Good drawing. It also shuts off aggressive pressure, so it can be good in that regard too. I'm just not like the hugest fan of this thing. I feel like a lot of times when I had it, I was not the biggest fan. Like it just kind of arrested all my momentum and just set things back a turn for me. Not the worst thing in the world though. It just is, I think, not the best here. I don't know really what I'd replace it with though. maybe another Gale, because Gale is unlimited in this format and is very, very good. You can go into off Tomato, search with Sangan, and just having an opponent's monster on level 3 bodies, like, pretty nice. Although, even when we're not playing Blackwings, maybe it's just better to have one of this. We got a dad as well because we play a fair amount of darks. We also play Pot of Avarice ×2 because, we go through a lot of cards for our combo very frequently. So oftentimes we will have Avarice live a lot. And so we do want to fix our graveyard a little bit in terms of darks. We can Pot of Avarice to, sort of set up for the dad. But dad, very, very good if you can drop it. We got Gores as well because we don't really play too many back row. So, like, we will play some, but generally if you're playing the deck well and you've got Gores, you're not going to have back row that will conflict with it. So this thing can come out very easily and just dominate the game if you have played it right. If you drop a Gores and then you set up an Oppression later, then it's just killer. And if your opponent has Oppression, Gores can play around Oppression because you bring it on the battle phase. So, or not the battle phase, the damage step, which is in the battle phase, but specifically the damage step, you can't activate Oppression in response to Gores. So, very, very good card here overall. We've also got a Neospace from Dark Panther as another cat target. That's also level 3. It's a dark 1000 attack point monster, so it's a crush card virus target. And also, if you're up against Blackwing, this thing is very, very good. You can copy a Sirocco and then use the effect to puff this thing up. So very, very good in that case. For the other cards in the deck, we got an Allure of Darkness here to draw deeper into the deck because we do play a fair amount of dark, so I think this thing is pretty good in that regard. We got Double Book of Moon to both reset like our spies or things like that, but also to just deal with our opponent's things. Oh, we got a Raikou as well. I forgot to mention the Raikou, so this can pair with the book too, but another rescue cat target. We got Cold Wave and Trunade and Heavy to just insulate our plays. Double Minecon. Reborn to bring back our monsters. Like, if you reborn a cat, that's like pretty crazy. But you can also reborn your opponent's things too. MST to deal with their back row. Double Pot, as I mentioned. Double Bottomless. This has been an interesting pick, but I think it actually is a very, very good back row in this format. It deals with a lot of what Blackwings are doing. It deals with cat plays because they go cat into like double Arbellum. You bottomless it, they lose all their Arbellums. Very, very good. So I think this thing is very good. And also it does hit a lot of the synchros that people are going into in this format. Crush Card Virus, I mentioned this before, this thing is cracked. Mirror Force is very good at stopping aggressive pressure, but it does have its weaknesses like, Heavy, Trunade, Cold Wave, that all hits it. So you could potentially side that out for, another Threatening Roar, which we are playing Threatening Roar. I think this thing is very good in this format. So maybe better than Mirror Force, but that is up to you and your own mileage to determine. Royal Oppression, very, very good. If we do our play and then we set up a Royal Oppression, that's very, very nice for us. We've got Solemn Judgment ×2, very good at shutting off your opponent's Solemn Judgments a lot of the time, but just also stopping very, very big plays. Turn Streak to blow up the board is the last card in the main deck. For the side deck, Triple Sirocco for Blackwings, Triple Crow for Graveyard Reliant decks. This can also be good to stop in the mirror match, like Pot of Avarice, so that's very nice there as well. A Guard and a Spy in case we want more of a defensive package with the Gravekeepers. Light Imprinting Mirror ×3 for Lightsworn. We got Triple Mirror of Oaths. This can be very good against Gladiator Beasts. It can also be very good against cat decks. It can be good, well, not really against Blackwings, because Blackwings, they activate Shura in the damage step, so you can't actually use this in response to that. But you can use it against a variety of other decks, so it is a very, very good tech card in this format. And then a Dust Shoot for if we know we're going first, or if we're up against a deck that often has a lot of cards in hand. Like, I think Dust Shoot's very good against Blackwings, because yes, they can search out more, but they likely will always have a bunch of cards in their hand due to Whirlwind. So yeah, that does it for the deck. Now, I call this deck Dump Cat here because this is a list that Dump Truck played, except for the light end. And, I figured it would look good enough from the past tournaments, and it did very well here. I actually went undefeated in the Swiss of this event. So, yeah, I think this thing is very, very good. If you want a cat deck to start out with, this is the one for you. But anyways, let's dive into the games. So the first game we got is against JainaFett, who actually went on to win the entire tournament. A little bit of a spoiler here, but we did face them in game 1. So let's see how that went. So we're going to be going into the first turn, and we do indeed win the die roll, so we are going to go first. And this is a pretty good hand. If we want to go into a cat play, we've both got a cat in hand, and we got a Summoner Monk. But I don't necessarily want to do that first turn, because then they could potentially crack back. So I figure I'll just set this Tomato and pass back to them, see what they do. Unfortunately for us, they are on Glad Beast, but they don't have any Glad Beast right now, so we don't realize that yet. So luckily our Tomato does walk, but they do go for Dust Shoot here, and luckily for us, we've got many ways to make our combo online. If they send back Summoner Monk, we've got Rescue Cat. If they send back the Rescue Cat, we got Summoner Monk to bring out the Rescue Cat. So I think this is pretty good for us. They're going to send back the Monk, which I think makes sense, because that's just one more body on board for a Rescue Cat to go into. So yeah, that gets shuffled back into the deck, and then we go for an MST on that back row, hitting a Eternal Tribute. I could have also gone for Heavy Storm instead, and then set the MST, because they're not really going to play into Heavy Storm and knowing we have it. But given they didn't bring out a monster, I figure that they're probably, like, light on monsters. They've got a bunch of spell and traps, and so they're probably just going to set more if they can. So I figure saving the heavy is probably better here. And now we can actually do a pretty big play. We can go for the rescue cat, bring back double air bellum so we can rip apart their hand a bit. Also bring out a tomato. But yeah, it's not a spy. If it was spy, that would be actually crazy because then we get out another body, and I think that actually would be lethal damage. But yeah, this is going to be a lot of damage here and 2 hand rips. So we attack him with the air bellum first, and this is actually to play around Gores. It may not seem like it plays around Gores, but the reason we do this is because we could just drop Gores on the tomato if we attacked him with that first, and then wouldn't get in the hand rips, even though we could get over the token. So I would like to get in hand rip first if I can. And luckily they don't have Gores, so we just get to rip out 2. We rip out an MST and a Solemn. And then main 2, we go into a Dark Strike Fighter, tribute out our Air Bellum, which is going to die anyways. And we could potentially sacrifice GSF here and deal 1400 damage, but we don't actually have lethal next turn if we do that. So I figure I'll leave the DSF here, set the bottomless, pass back to them, see what they do. But yeah, they just admitted defeat because they were in a really bad spot there. I mean, it seemed like they kind of bricked a bit. But that does happen with a variety of decks in the format. The cat deck can also brick, but luckily we got a very good hand there and we didn't brick. This hand is also pretty good. We'll have to see how it does for us. They're going to set 1, set 2, pass back to us. So another, very slow turn for them. But we do have the combo, so we might as well do it. We've got another cat in hand as well, so we can use that too. And we're going to go for Summoner Monk here. We're actually going to pitch the book. Now, I could have pitched the Avarice as well because we don't have Avarice on 9 now. We got Monk going into Cat, and we've also got, Cat in hand. So I figure we'll get into the 5 cards very quickly. And so it's probably better to just have the Pot of Avarice to potentially extend more instead. But we do go into the Cat here, and it looks like that'll be fine. So we're going to go for Prio there. Then we're going to go into an Air Bellum and an Air Bellum here. And that will get Mirror of Oaths. So I already mentioned in the deck breakdown, this thing is pretty good against the Cat deck. And it will indeed come in clutch for our opponent here. So they will get to draw a card, and we'll set a TT pass back to them. They are going to go for MST on our TT, which is disastrous for us, especially when they go for Murmillo, go for Test Tiger, sending back Murmillo, bring out Murmillo, pop the Monk, going for Reborn on the Test Tiger to then go into a Secutor here. That's going to be pretty bad for us, potentially. So they're going to attack in for 400, then bring out a Laquari and a Hiplomas here. And now they do have the material to go into a Heraclinos if they want to. Heraclinos would be a bit bad for us because it does negate our stuff. But if they do go into Heraclinos, what we probably do is we just set a tomato, have them attacking the tomato, and then we bring out another thing. And then we potentially set up another play to go into Arcanite to pop that Heraclinos. It's still not the best for us depending on what the set card in the back row is, but it's not the end of the world for us. But it seems like our opponent's going to leave their board as is, which tells us that they likely have some way to, protect their board here. So we'll have to see if we can figure out a way to get around that. So we're going to go for Reborn, target the Monk here, see if that's okay. And it looks like that will be fine. We're not going to use priority on the effect because, I want to see what they've got in the macro. So I don't want to chain Prio and then they do something that, stops this. So they're going to just book the Monk here. And yeah, so I think that makes some sense. I think they could have potentially waited, but if they had waited, then the book would have been less good. So I think that does make some sense there to do that. And now we're going to go for Cat here, going for the Air Bellum and this Panther here. So now we can go into a 6. We'll go into a Goyo here. And now we can potentially take something, or we could go for Avarice first, which I think is probably the better play. Yeah, we do have 5 in grave, so we might as well go for the Avarice now. So I think we send back all the Air Bellums and the Cats, which we do indeed do. And now we potentially are set up for next turn with the Summoner Monk. But we actually draw into something even better here off this. We draw into Solemn and Threatening. Okay, I mixed this up for a later game. We draw into something very good off Avarice in a later game, but it looks like this will be fine. We attack in Laquari, and my reasoning here is I've got Threatening more to stop their attacking in, and just having another beater can clear up their board a bit more easily. And also, if I bring Laquari to my side of the field, if they've got a way to go into a Darius, they can't bring that back and then go into Heraclinos. So I feel like this is a pretty good play, but I do have Solemn for the Heraclinos if they do go into that, so I feel like this might be a bit of a risk. But if they do try and, attack into it, we do have Roar. So I feel like this should be ultimately okay. They're going to switch the Hiplomas to attack. We go for Roar here. And, yes, so that Hiplomas is now in attack. They're going to take a fair amount of damage from that. And they can switch the Secutor to defense, so that's something. But, yeah, they're just going to set 2, pass back. And the fact that they did not switch the Secutor to defense means that they probably have some way to deal with this. So I'm a bit worried about this. I'm going to flip up the Monk. And unfortunately, that Monk does get switched to defense. I don't realize that yet. But yeah, that does go to defense. And then they're going to activate TT on that. So they're going to blow up the board there, which I'm ultimately okay with because I do have this tomato. So I can just bring up the tomato, attack in, save the solemn for something a little bit more meaningful, especially if they had another back row that, would stop our attacking in over their Secutor Diplomas. I don't want them to keep that around necessarily. So I figure this is fine. They're going to set one pass back. We draw oppression, so we can actually use that. Back at the tomato with that a bit. And tomato, just like, spy or things like that that happen in damage step, cannot actually be oppression. So we sort of play under our own oppression that way. But they're going to set one pass back. They've used up TT, so I feel fine bringing out Bellum here. That's going to be fine. I'm going to switch the tomato to defense attack game with the Bellum there. They're going to think about this a bit, and they're going to take that. So they lose the Respite in hand, which Respite a bit of a brick there, unfortunately, for them. They're going to go for a Proving Ground here, so they do get a search off that. They're going to go for a Liquari here, which will be able to attack over our Bellum or our tomato, and that will indeed go through. But now, oppression very good against Gladbeast, because we can actually use the oppression here and, stop that Liquari from bringing out another thing. They're going to go for Solemn on that. I go for Solemn on this. If we got another Solemn, I'm kind of cooked a little bit, but I do have Gores in hand to drop on something. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but it is definitely a bit of a downside. But looks like that's not going to happen. So I feel pretty good there. And I draw Book, which is even better. Attacking with the tomato. Let's see if this goes through. They're going to think about this. They're going to Woboku there. I think that makes sense. We're going to set the Book, pass back to them. They're going to go for a Bestiary here, attack into our tomato. And we're going to think about this because we could potentially just book down the Bestiary, which we will do. I could have let that attack go through, get a summon off tomato because it can't be oppression, and then go from there. But I can't really think of what better card I would get off that, so I figured this is ultimately fine. I draw into Spy, so we could summon that Spy attack in, but I want to save this in case they've got like Mirror Force or Dimpriz or something like that to protect the Bestiary. But we're just going to set one pass back. They're going to bring out a Test Tiger, attack in, because that is just the end of the game. They've got My Body as shield, which is not going to help them here, so yeah, that's kind of rough for them. So they did indeed lose this game to the cat deck. I mean, we did draw well, or they didn't really draw the best. But I think this was a pretty intense one. And so it does show how the cat deck can just kind of steamroll over decks if they don't really draw what they need to. Anyways, going into game 2, we're up against Helios Trident here. I believe this is another Gladbeast game. Yes, it's another Gladbeast game. So we'll see how this one does here. We're going, and I will be showing off Gladbeast as well on the channel because, as I mentioned, Jaina won the event. So, and she played Gladbeast, so we will be, showing off the winning deck list there and sort of getting into why Gladbeasts are a pretty decent pick for this format, which you probably will be able to see in this game a little bit. But we don't have really the best opening hand. We do have Cat, which is like, you don't necessarily want to go for Cat first turn, but given I've got another Bellum in hand as well, and I kind of want to set for Avarice or go into an 8 play next turn, I figure it's better to do this now, especially given I've got Oppression. So if I can, I'd like to activate Oppression and stop what they're doing. So yeah, I feel like this is ultimately a fine play. We gain 600 from this. I realize I forgot to do that here, but I remember to sort of go into that later. They go for a Cat play. I go for Bottomless since this is getting out 2 1600s. And this can banish both. They're going to book down the Samnite. That's ultimately okay. Yeah, it does need to stop the Bottomless Trap Hole because it can't check that the monster still has 1500 attack when it's set down. So yeah, it will stop the Bottomless. And yeah, they're going to go for, they can't summon anything else. So I think they're just going to pass back to us here. But yeah, I remember the 600 life points at the end of that turn there. But they're going to set 2 pass back. We draw into an MST, which is not bad. But I feel like here we can just get aggressive, summon out the Bellum that gets Bottomless. So I'm ultimately okay with that. I was going to probably go into a Stardust just to play around things like, Mirror Force and stuff. But I do have Book of Moon to play around Mirror Force a bit, so I think I will just attack in here. They've got Mirror Force, I book it down. And now I'm just going to set the MST, pass back to them. They're going to bring out a Bestiary here. They're going to attempt to go into a Geysers here, but we do have the Oppression, which we will use here. So we've taken up their normal summon. We've gotten rid of their monster. The MST, the back row in the end phase, it's a Bottomless, so our magical android will still be protected here. And now we can go for that. So we're going to flip up our android attack in for 24. We don't quite have enough in grave for the Avarice, but we're getting there. And we've got Minecon, so, we are in a pretty good spot here overall, I think. They're going to pass back to us. We draw into Summoner Monk, which is pretty good for us. Although we don't necessarily want to use it right now. We can just try and bait out 800 life points of theirs. Which we will indeed do here. Actually, I forget that Oppression's up. But yeah, the move, I mean, there are different sort of ideas for like when to do this or not, but I think the move might be still to like bait out the Oppression from our opponent and just get them 800 down more, because now they've got a 2-turn clock on Android. So that might have still been the move. But yeah, they choose to do the Oppression on the Cat effect instead of the Monk effect. So yeah, we go for Avarice here. and we will shuffle back everything but the Neospace and Dark Panther. So that will all go into the deck. We draw 2. And that's another reason to go for the Monk, is that we've got the another monster in Grave if they oppression it. So that's something. But yeah, we also have Crush Card, which is absolutely insane here. But oh, okay, interesting. So yeah, because the cat's negated, those wouldn't be in the deck. So actually, this is a bit messed up. So this game's a little bit scuffed. Apologies for that. I set back everything, and yeah, I was a bit distracted during this game. So yeah, and part of that's why I forget the exact nature of like what exactly is going on here. I should have probably reviewed this beforehand, but it's still fine. I still think we did a pretty good thing. They go for BrainCon here, paying 800 more, taking control of the android, attacking in to the monk here, and then they book it down. And at this point, like, I'm thinking, like, does this actually stay? Does it not? I feel like I'm in a good enough spot with, my graveyard fully, 5 cards to draw off Avarice, and I've got 9,000 life points. They've only got 1,600. I feel like I'm in a good enough spot where if it does work that the monster remains set on their side of the field, it should be fine either way. So I just let them have it. Like, I don't necessarily know if that's correct or not. It turns out that it is not correct and that the monster should return to me. It's not like booking down a monster taken by Snatch Steal. I don't think it ultimately matters in the end here. So I think about this a bit. I go for the cat just to try and bait out that 800, and it will indeed bait that out. I set the Solemn, pass back to them. They go for a Cold Wave here, and I will think on that Cold Wave. I think I actually do let that go. I think I could have potentially gone for Solemn on the Cold Wave, so that way I could negate a Glad Beast activation or something like that with the Oppression. But I think this is fine. I can probably save this, and this means that they can't say anything as well. So I can then use Gale to have the android and then get in over that. So that's indeed what I do. I summon out Gale. I have the android, and then I attack over it, dealing 100 and then dropping them down to 1,300, which the Gale can then get in for next turn if it needs to. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. We've got Solemn, so I feel very good about this. I'm just going to summon out the Airbellum, attack him with the Airbellum. It could be like a Plomus or something, but it looks like it's not. So we're going to go on to game 2. So hopefully game 2 is a little bit less scuffed. I think it is a bit less scuffed than game 1 because I started to really focus on the game in game 2. We'll see what happened here. They're going to think about this a bit, go for a Sam Knight set 2, pass back to us. I mean, we've got heavy, we've got Trunade, we've got multiple options here. So I do decide to just heavy this, I believe, because I want to save Trunade for if I've established impression and then maybe want that back in hand as opposed to, just a Trunade here. But I'm going to have their Sam Knight with the Gale and then just attack over it. I do have Mirror of Oaths as well for Gladby, so I brought that in. I feel like it's very good here in this matchup. And then I'm going to set that pass back to our opponent. They're going to think about this bit, go for Reborn on the Sam Knight. So luckily, Sam Knight did not have its effect originally. It has to be summoned by a Gladiator Beast to actually get its effect there, but they do have Test Tiger, so they're able to go Test Tiger and then bring out a Bestiari here. And I will just chain Mirror of Oaths because, it's going to be gone anyways, so I will at least get rid of the Bestiari, get a draw here as well. Draw into Alert, which is pretty good here. They've got an Airbellum because they do play Cat in this deck, so Airbellum is a pretty good target for that. They're going to attack over our Gale and pass back to us. We draw a Dad, 1 Dark Engrave. We could potentially figure out a way to get 3 Darks, like summon a Tomato, attack into the Airbellum, and then crash something else in and get that way. But we can also just go for Alert and see what we get. So we're going to draw 2, banish 1. We're going to banish the Panther. And then we're going to think about this a bit. We could go for the Tomato play, this drop Dad, and then leave it at that. That might be the better play overall, because it's just depriving them of resources. But we're just going to summon out this Valley and pass back to them. I think it's a bit risky if they've got a BrainCon or a MindCon. Yes, if they got BrainCon or MindCon, they can just take control of our Dad, but they don't have any Darks Engrave. So it should be better for us there if they do that. But they're just going to attack into the Valley. We get to draw off that Valley, draw into a Sangan, and they'll pass back to us. We draw an MST. So I could just go MST here first, but it looks like I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to set the Tomato instead of ramming it into the Airbellum. I think that's also probably fine, but we'll see what happens here. They're going to go for Test Tiger. They're going to sink into a 6. They're going to sink into Goyo here. And Goyo could be a bit annoying for us because they take the Tomato, so that does mess up our Dark count. They're going to attack over that, and we're going to bring out a Summoner Monk here for next turn. So now we can potentially pitch the Trunade here. They're going to set 1. We are going to MST the new one in case like Wobogu or Threatening Roar. It's going to be a Book of Moon there. We draw into a Mirror of Oaths here. Now we could potentially hold the Trunade. And I actually think in hindsight, well, so here's the thing. I think in hindsight, it's better to go Trunade and then just summon out Airbellum, sink into a 7, and then drop Dad, pop the Goyo, and then get in for, I'm not sure if that's lethal because Dark Arm plus Dark Strike Fighter is going to be 28 plus 26. So that's going to be 5,400, and then you tribute Dark Arm for 14, which then is, yeah, so actually that would be lethal. So the move here is actually to activate Trinate and not use the Summon Rung, which actually I do. Okay, cool. So I go into the Airbellum, sink into the Dark Strike, and I drop the Dad. Glad to see that I remembered the move there. But yeah, I go in for 26 plus 28, and then this will indeed be lethal damage overall. And yeah, that will be lethal damage. So yeah, pretty intense games here. Pretty good ones, I think, overall. I think it does show, again, the power of this deck. We haven't actually lost a game yet. We've gone 2-0 in each of these games here. And yeah, just because this deck is so surprisingly flexible, honestly. You can just do the big combo and just kill your opponent, or you can play a bit slower. Like, there's a lot of different things you can do with this deck, and I hope that game did show that a little bit. Next game, we're going to be up against Shabam 4 here, so this will not be a Glad Beast match. We have faced 2 Glad Beast decks so far. This one will be a bit different. We start out with Sangan plus Crush Card, and that is a great combo. So we're going to go set Sangan, set both Crush Card, pass back to our opponent. They're going to go for a Jain, so it seems like they're on Lightsworn here. They're going to attack into our Sangan. Now's the perfect time to Crush Card. We're going to get rid of that. Get rid of Gores, get rid of JD, get rid of Celestia, and we get to see their hand as well. See that they've got a Raikou and an Honest. So that is a pretty good hand for them overall, but we do have Minecon to take the Raikou, so it's not really the best here for them. We're going to search out a Gale with the Sangan as well. We could have gone for a Cat. That might have been the better choice. Just go Cat, rip out the 2 cards in hand, and leave it at that. And I'd say that actually probably would have been the right choice. And, I mean, we would have lost our Airbellum to the end of the turn, but they would be down to no cards and, like, top decking into Crush Card, which is obviously not ideal. But I think Gale's also fine. We draw into Airbellum here, so we can just go for that. But it looks like we're just going to go for Summer Monk into Minecon. And, yeah, they're just going to admit defeat there, because we effectively do the same thing there. So, yeah, that's probably why we didn't search out the Cat and just went for the Gale there, because if the Summer Monk play failed, then, you know, it's not really the best for us. But, yeah, they're just going to admit defeat. They know that, like, they're basically dead at that point. So, anyways, we're going to go into the next game here. We are going second. I know they're on Lightsworn, so I think I did bring in some Light Imprisoning Mirrors. I forget how many. I really need to take better notes on that, which I've actually mentioned in the past, but for some reason I always forget to do it after I mention that. But they're going to go for Charge, searching out a Garoth here. So, interesting choice, but is a big guy, so it makes some sense. They're going to summon out a Lila, mill 3, and pass back to us. They do have the Necrogarden Engrave, which does make things a little bit complicated for us, but we should still be good. So, we can start with an alert here if we want to, but we're actually going to save that a bit because we've got Cat in hand. We don't necessarily draw into the targets for that. I think this is a pretty good setup. We've got the Roar to chain to the Lila activation, so I don't need to dig deep in the deck when I've got a perfectly good strategy here. So they're going to go for Lila. We go for Roar. They're going to go for Lumina here, pitching a Garoth here. But they can't actually do this because they don't have a level 4 Lightsworn Engrave. So you need to have a target engrave before activating Lumina. I've made this mistake myself, which is why I know about this. So it's something that can happen to anyone, but it is unfortunate there because they did summon out the Lumina there. I believe I do let them take this back, though. And yeah, I'm just like, for me, I think it's just like, I want to play the best game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Possible. I feel like it's the best game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Possible when, you know, you sort of let your opponent take back those sort of things that they would not have done if they actually knew the correct ruling. Different people have different opinions on this. I'm personally fine with it. I completely get if you're not fine with it. So, yeah, but they're going to mill a bunch with that Lila there. So they're only getting Celestia's Engrave, really. They've got the Necro Engrave as well, so that's pretty good for them. But we're going to flip up this Spy, bring in another Spy, and then we've got Rescue Cat here as well, so we can go for Cat, go into an Airbellum, and then go into another Airbellum. We're going to go in, or we're going to do Learn Now, I guess, which is fine. It just gets us more options here. We're going to draw 2, and DD Crow is actually really good because we can use that to just get that third Dark Engrave for our dad. We're going to go for a Dark Strike Fighter here. And then we're going to go into a... Yeah, we're going to go into another Dark Strike Fighter. There's a lot of damage coming down. And then we're going to tribute that. I guess I do this... I think it was a mistake on my part. I think I should have just gone for DD Crow and targeted, like, maybe Necro. Bait out the Necro activation, but then I get the third Dark Engrave. So then I can just drop Dad along with double Dark Strike Fighter. Dad pop their board. One of them's negated, but then I'm getting in for 5,200 damage here. They don't have Gores, and then I just win off that. So I actually made a key misplay here. I definitely did misplay this quite a bit. I should have activated DD Crow. For some reason, I guess I didn't think of it. I went for the Dark Strike Fighter Tribute Dark Strike Fighter option, which was not ideal because it does give them another turn to potentially survive. So I'm going to pop that set. I'm going to go for Avarice now to shuffle back things into the deck. I don't know if this actually leaves a Dark in grave or not. I don't know if it does. It might not. But I draw 2 more here, drawing into another Avarice, and then I just attack in. They're going to, Necrogardna on the Dark Strike attack, probably, and they do indeed do that. And now in main 2, I'm going to just, I believe, set the TT. I might hold it, though. Yeah, I guess I just hold it because we got a great board already. But yeah, this was a major misplay. I could have just won last turn. But for some reason, I didn't see it. So that's hindsight 2020. It's good to always sort of keep an option or keep an eye on the options you have. And the DD Crow option would have definitely been the right choice because that would have just been lethal through everything, really. But they go for Luma, pitch 1, and they're going to target the Garroth. I go for a DD Crow there to stop that. And now they've got Honest, they can attack over the dead, and they do need to have Honest. So now we lose our sort of popper there, which is kind of unfortunate. And then in end phase, they're going to mill 3, pass back to us. Airbellum's pretty good. Rips a card out of their hand potentially. But we could just go Sangan, crash in case they've got another Honest. If they go Honest here, we can beat over that with Dark Strike. So we're just going to do that. We're going to search out Summoner Monk here for later. And then we can attack in for 2600 with our Dark Strike. And now main 2, we're going to set the TT, pass back to them. Let's see what they do. They've got JD, and that's why we dropped the TT. Because, they had 4 Lightsworns in grave. So I did kind of want that there. So they're going to use Prio as well. So they do pay 1,000 here. But we do manage to pop that. They set 1, pass back to us. We draw into Book of Moon, which is pretty good here. We are going to go for Monk. And we're going to Monk pitch the book because we do have Avarice here. And we want that Avarice to shuffle things back in the deck, draw some more. So we're going to go for the cat, go for double Airbellum here. And then I'm going to go for pot, see if we can draw any further extension. We're going to send back the cat, the Dark Strike Fighter, the Sangan, the dad, and the crow. So shuffle that all back in, draw 2. We do draw into Light Imprisonment Mirror, so I did side this in. We're going to go for an Arcanite Magician here to play around the Raikou. And if it is indeed Raikou, then we actually win the game here because we remove 1 counter. This 1400 attack on the Arcanite, 1600 attack on the Airbellum, and so that will get in for lethal damage. But unfortunately for us, it's Necrogardna, so we won't quite have lethal here. They will be able to stop the Airbellum attack here, and they will indeed do that. So main 2, we're just going to set Light Imprisoning, which is kind of awkward with the Arcanite because it will negate the Arcanite's effect, but it's just in case. And we do have Airbellum to walk over them afterwards, but unfortunately for them, they drew into Wolf, Trap Eater. So I'm very glad we didn't preemptively activate this because that actually would have lost us the game. They would have Trap Eatered, and they would have been able to get over the Arcanite. But luckily for us, that did not happen. So very, very good games here. Again, I misplayed on the second one. We could have actually ended this a lot sooner. But that just showed the power of this deck. Even if you don't play it perfectly, there are often lines that actually do win you the game either way. So it can grind out a little bit. It can go very aggressive. It has a lot of options. I just think this deck is very, very good. Is it the best deck in the format? That's up to debate. I think there are a lot of very high octane and very good decks running around. I think it's definitely a deck that is kind of being slept on in the modern era. Because I feel like a lot of people got on the Blackwing train when Blackwings are very good. Don't get me wrong, but I think that they might be on the same level as the cat deck. But we'll just see what happens here. Our opponent's going to go first here, JainaFett. And they're going to go for Allure, draw 2, banish that Gale there. So they are on Blackwings. So we finally have a Blackwing matchup. Opponent's going to set 2, summon out Shura here. And we are going to go... I mean, this is a bit tricky because they could have Icarus. But to play around Icarus, I'm going to just set a Sangan, set Bottomless Crush card. Now, we will have a card online no matter what. We could get into a worst case scenario where they Icarus the Sangan and the Bottomless, leaving a dead Crush card, which would be kind of bad. But if they do Icarus us, then they don't have the Shura, so that's pretty good for us too. So I don't necessarily want to play into Delta Crow anti-reverse by setting more, so I figure that this is ultimately a good compromise. But I don't quite know. I'm not sure how many decks are like maining Delta Crow anti-reverse, but that's a trap that like gets rid of all your sets if you own a Blackwing. So we're gonna go for Crush card here though, tribute that Sangan. And they do a Solemn for that, but ultimately this worked out for us because they don't get the summon off Shura here. So we do get a search as well. So we're going to search out a Spy because that can wall off the Shura. And then they're going to attack in for 18 here with that Shura. So they're going to pass back to us. We draw Braincom, which is very good here. We're going to go for Cat first and see what they do. We're going to Cat, bring out Airbellum, and then bring out Airbellum. And then we're going to, we get Bottomless, I guess. So that is not the best for us, but yes, we lose both. But we did have the brain con there, didn't take the Shura and do more stuff with it. But I'm glad we saved the brain con ultimately because, we wouldn't be able to win there with that bottomless getting rid of our Arbellums. But I feel like we're in a pretty good spot overall either way here. They're going to tank in for 18 with the Shura. And then they're going to set one pass back to us. We draw TT, which is very good. But, we don't want to play into Heavy or Delta Crow. So we're just going to set a Spy pass back. They're going to go for Shura attack into the Spy. They do have Kalute. So I figured by this point they probably had a Kalute. But I think it's ultimately fine. We're going to bring out a Spy. They're going to think about this a bit and bring out a Gale. So that's a bit worrying because they could go into a pretty good 7. They could go into Black Rose, blow up the whole board, which would be pretty bad. But we do have Oppression here to stop whatever they go into. So it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just a bad thing if they've got Oppression or a way to out the Oppression. But if they go into Armor Master, we can just bottomless that and not have to worry about locking ourselves out under Oppression. They do have Dad, though. So that we will have to use a Oppression on here. So we will be able to pay 8. So they don't actually get the priority to banish the Kalute because this will negate that effect. And they have not normal summon this turn, so they'll summon out a Sirocco and pass back to us. We draw into a Gores, which is pretty good here. Because we actually have a very good play this turn. We can go for Brain Con on the Sirocco, switch the Spy to attack in for 12 and 2,000. They're going to think about that. If they've got a Mirror Force, it's bad for us, but we could set TT. And then they blow up our board, we get Gores to drop. If they don't, then, we just TT that. And that's pretty good for us. There is the risk that, they attack in and then they Kalute and kill us that way. So we don't even have a chance to drop Gores, but I think this is still worth doing here. Although I definitely could have left the Spy in defense here as a safer play. But I'm not going for the safer play. I'm going for the aggressive play. I'm going to go and attribute both, set the Gores over that to play around the Brain Con, and then I'm going to set a bottomless pass back to them. They are going to go for Upstart here, so we do gain 1,000, so that's very nice. It insulates us a bit about just getting killed out of nowhere with Kalutes. They're going to go for Whirlwind and then summon out a Kalute, speaking of. And then they're going to search out a Gale here. So Gale can be special summoned, but I can negate that with the Oppression. We're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Dad. We have 1, 2, 3 Darks and Grave. So we might as well just drop it because they can't do anything with that Oppression up. So it looks like the summon will be fine. So we use priority here to pop one of their back row. I hadn't selected, and they just flipped up the bottomless. So, I guess I'm just going to select the other one then. They probably should have waited for the target. But unfortunately for them, they switched to the bottomless. I don't think it really would have mattered here. Because either way, I'm attacking in over that Kalute for game. I know the card in hand is a Gale, so I know that they can't Kalute this. So, or I could just flip up the Gores attack into it, and either way, it should be fine. So, yeah. But yeah, I go for attacking over that, and that is indeed going to be the end of game 1. So, pretty good game for 1 for us. I think our opponent maybe bricked a little bit. They drew Whirlwind a bit too late. But we bricked too, honestly, there a little bit. We didn't really draw into our combo or ways to stop our opponent from interacting with our combo. So it was kind of an atypical game for both decks. Let's see if we can get a more typical game this game. They're going to go for Allure, banish 1, pass back. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. And we are going to go for, this is actually a thinker, but we go ultimately for the Cold Wave. And then we're going to pitch the Heavy. So this does leave them with a card on field, which is pretty bad. But I do think that this is still the better play because it means that they can't activate spells and traps to, then deal with what we have on field here. So we're going to bring out double Arbellum, attack him for 16 and 16, and that will indeed go through. And we rip 2 cards out of their hand. We rip a Dad, very happy to see that gone, and a Brain Con, very happy to see that gone. We're then going to go into a Dark Strike here and then tribute that Arbellum to deal 600 damage, pass back to them. They are going to go for Sirocco here, and unfortunately they do have a way to out our Dark Strike Fighter. So this is potentially a reason to go for Heavy instead, because then we would have had the Solemn to Solemn the Sirocco. But then that would have left us open to potential crackbacks on their part. So they're going to buff the Sirocco up to 3,300 after having our Dark Strike. And they're going to attack over that for 2,000. Set 1, pass back to us. We draw bottoms, pretty good. Actually, they couldn't have set that other card there because they were under Cold Wave. But I don't think it mattered too much here. We'll have to see what happens. But if I remember correctly, it didn't matter in the end. They do manage to pop up with their back row, which is unfortunate because that actually could have ended up mattering. But I think overall, we still do good here. They will go for knock, banish our spies. So, I'm saying this turned out well, but it's not looking like it's going well for us. But honestly, this deck can turn things around in an instant. They're going to pass back to us. We draw Avarice here, and Avarice is a great one. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards in Grave. We can get some more in with the Cat if we want to do that. But I want to sort of shuffle back in the Arbellums, I think, before I go for the Cat play. So we're going to shuffle in a bunch there and then shuffle that up, draw 2. We draw into Mirror Force and Reborn, which is very, very good here. We can get a lot done with this hand. So we're going to think about this a bit, and ultimately I decide to go for a cat, tribute cat, summon out a, oh, I guess I sided out Panther. Okay, yeah, but Panther would be lethal here, I'm pretty sure, because you go into Panther, and then you Panther buff itself up by 3,800 and attack over something, and then you got another thing as well, so yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. I guess I sided it out. I don't know why I did that. Very, very bad play to side that out, but they've got Bottomless for our Earbellum. We've got Reborn, though, so we can make some stuff happen here. We're going to go for Reborn, target the cat, go for this again. So now we can go into Earbellum and Earbellum. So now we can go into a 5 and then an 8 and make some stuff happen that way. So we go into an Android and then we go into a Colossal. The reason I go into Colossal is if they've got like a Colute or something to try and get over this, then Colossal will come back. So I think this is ultimately the better thing to do, but it also could be like better to make Stardust or something, given I've got Mirror Force in hand to then stop them from attacking in. So that probably would have been better in hindsight, but again, hindsight's 2020. When you're in the game, it's not. So it's also something that like the more games you play in the format, the more you learn. The more you look over replays, the more you learn. So this is me getting experience in the format a bit, and I will make some hiccups here and there. But I definitely think that the Colossal was not the right synchro to go into here. We're going to attack into that Shura, though. Pass back to them. We don't want to blind allure. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw Book here. So we still don't want to really blind allure. We don't want to, I guess we will commit into Heavy Storm here because they draw Heavy Storm off the top. Then they're not trying something else they can kill us. But I don't really think that's the best play overall. They're going to go for a Blizzard here. They're going to target the Gale. Gale's kind of annoying for us, but not the worst thing in the world. And then they're going to special summon out a Bora here. Now, I think at this point, what I should have done is I should have gone for Book of Moon on the Bora. But honestly, Black Rose was not on my mind at all. I was not even thinking about it. I was like, okay, they're going to go into like an Armor Master just to wall up, and, have a monster they can't destroy with battle. And so that'll be annoying for me. But yeah, Black Rose is definitely the right choice to make here, and they do indeed do that. So it wasn't even on my mind, but I should have booked that Bora, so that way they wouldn't have had an opportunity to go into it. So that was a misplay on my part, and unfortunately they do indeed go into that. So they blow up the whole board, and yeah, that will be the end of their turn. We can potentially draw into some good stuff here. We draw into Sirocco, which we did indeed side in, and now we got a choice to banish either the Gale or the Sirocco. So there are pros and cons to each. I feel like Sirocco is pretty good because if they summon out a monster and attack into us, then we can just bring out Sirocco and then buff itself up and then attack over that monster. So I feel like Sirocco might be the better thing to keep in hand. But Gale, if they don't draw any monsters, Gale can just get in each turn and then potentially kill them. So there's a choice to be made there. I ultimately decided to banish the Gale because I feel like that takes more turns than a Sirocco does. And I don't think that they can actually quite kill us here yet. If they draw into another Blizzard, that does kill us because they go Blizzard, go into Armed Wing, and then they win that way. So that is also a risk to not going for the Gale instead of the Sirocco. But I still feel like this is ultimately okay. And they're going to bring out a Colute, some of that out, attack in for 14. And that's going to be very good for us because now we can bring out the Sirocco and attack over that Colute. And also I could have kept the Missile Typhoon in hand to keep for a Monk here to go into another monster from our deck, which might have been the better play. But I figured it was better to bluff there in case they did have Blizzard and like they're like, oh, do I summon the Blizzard into this? But yes, they would. Like it's the only thing they've got, so they're gonna go for that either way. So I think MST would have been better to keep in hand. But luckily it does pay its worth here because we can go for MST on the macro, stop that threatening roar, and we do indeed win the game from that. So definitely a lot of misplays here in this game. But, we ultimately managed to come through. And I think that is sort of, again, the power of this deck. This deck can actually be surprisingly good in a top deck war. You wouldn't necessarily think it because this is a combo deck that had a lot of pieces that you don't necessarily want to draw. But your combo basically makes you go through those pieces so much that, like, oftentimes you are drawing very high quality cards later on in the game. But let's get to our last game with Swiss here against Didled. We were both undefeated up to this point. So this is sort of to see who will, like, quote unquote, win Swiss. But it's more just to see how the seeding will go in Top Cut there. But our opponent's going to set 1, pass back to us. We've got a Minecon, which is very good here, so we're just going to go for that Minecon. No need to go for Cold Wave right now because they got no back row. So we see that they've got a Raikou there. We know they're on Cat deck based on, their past games in the tournament. So I also felt like this was fine. We're going to go for a Rescue Cat here, go into Earbellums before flipping up the Raikou because we do want a mill because I feel like this deck generally wants things engraved for like Avarice and stuff like that. But we also don't necessarily want to, mill our Rescue Cat targets, right? So we're going to bring out those Earbellums first, and then we're going to mill. So we flip up the Raikou, mill into a Dad and a saying, yeah, not what we want to mill there. We're going to attack in for 16, rip a Avarice. We can't attack him with the Raikou. Luckily, that is rectified here. We do attack in with the Earbellum. and we will rip out a Allure. So we ripped out 2 draw cards, which I'm not upset about. And then we can go into an 8 here if we want to. So we're going to go into Android, and then we're going to go into a Stardust here, because we do have a Bottomless, just help what they've got. And I feel like Stardust is just resilient monster in general. They're going to go for Minecon, though, on the Stardust, which is going to be a bit annoying for us, especially when they go for Valley here. Banish the Stardust. Again, that's why you'd play Valley. I didn't really pull off those turns that much when I was playing, but like I also feel like they went for Valley with Minecon, banished both, and then passed. Like, it's kind of a passive play for a deck that wants to be getting aggressive, and now we can just sort of crack back here. Yes, they could have drawn into things to stop our crackback off that Valley play, but like I feel like it's better in general to just like do a play like Set Spy or something, where it's like, yes, you're not getting rid of the Stardust, but you're keeping yourself alive more than I think Valley provides. But that's just my take on it. And I think Diddle has played a bit more of this deck than I have, and has like sort of tested with it a little bit more as well. So we're going to go for the cat play, going in for 2,600 damage and ripping a card out of hand. So we rip out a guard, which is very, very good, because that would be able to deal with our Goyo here that we're going to go into. Although we do have this Minecon, so we could have just taken the guard. But still, I feel like this is a pretty good trade there. We set a Roar, pass back to them in case they've got Heavy or Cold Wave or something like that. They do need to have the Heavy, so we're going to go for Roar here. So no attacks will happen this turn. They're going to set a Sire Valley, set 1, pass back to us. And we can actually potentially go for a game here if we go Minecon on the Valley and then just attack in. So that might be what we do. We instead go for Cold Wave, I guess, because we're afraid of that back row. I feel like, honestly, if we go Minecon and then just attack him with both, like, or not with both, but like with the Goyo, there isn't really much we're afraid of. If they've got like a Mirror Force or Saku or something like that, we book a move down the Goyo and then we banish it with the Sire Valley, and then we win the game that way. Really, the only downside is like Roar. If it's Roar, I still think we banish the Goyo in the Valley, and then we've got more cards in hand than our opponent. We've got Book of Moon as a defensive card. So like, I feel like this was a misplay. But luckily, it doesn't actually end up mattering too much. We attack into the Valley, and the Valley will get banished. They draw 1, pass back to us, or we pass back to them, that is. And yeah, they're just going to admit defeat there. So luckily, it didn't matter, but I do feel like it would have been better just to go for lethal there. But we're going to go into the next game here, and let's see what they do. They're going to draw 1, set 1, set another, pass back to us. We draw into a Tomato here. Tomato's pretty good at just sort of being defensive. We set Tomato, set MST, set Threatening, and set Mirror Force, pass back to our opponent. And we see what they do. They're going to go for a Cold Wave here. I will ultimately decide to Roar in response to that. And they're going to flip a right go, pop our Tomato, mill 3. And then they're just going to go for a Airbellum to go into Android. Again, very nice play because you get that life point gain. But unfortunately for them, we do have this cat, so we can go into cat, go into Airbellum and the Neospatial Dark Panther, go into Goyo, and then just take that Android. And now we're in a really, really good spot. So we can attack in that Android, and then bring to our side of the field, gain the life point at the end of the turn, and then just pass back to them. We still have this Mirror Force and MSC, which are now online due to the Cold Wave sort of finishing up. They're going to go for Sidra plus Cat here. Cat will bring out 2 monsters from their deck. They're going to bring out Airbellum, and they're going to bring out Neospatial Dark Panther. And they're going to go into, they're going to go into Colossal, okay, because Colossal does deal with the Goyo, so that makes some sense. They probably also have a Solemn back there, so it makes sense to do this because we get Mirror Force, they Solemn it, so that'd be a bit rough for us. But we're going to go for Mirror Force. They do need Solemn. We could have got MST beforehand, but like, they then know that we've got Mirror Force, so like, I feel like it's not really worth the 50-50 there on the MST. But yeah, they're going to get rid of our Goyo, and then they're going to summon out their own Colossal back again. They could have also gone for take Goyo from our graveyard, and then attacked over the Android to take it back. That's another option. But I guess they want the sort of just stickability of the Colossal Fighter on field, which I think does make some sense. So yeah, they're going to attack in to the Android, and then attack in for 1,000. So yeah, Goyo cannot take the Colossal as well. I asked that in the chat on the side. And yeah, it does not actually work that way. I was just curious. I figured it wouldn't, but I just wanted to know. We draw in a guard, which is like one of the best draws we could possibly get here. We go for MST on the back row just in case. It's a Mirror of Oaths. And then we set the guard and the Oppression pass back to them. I think we could have gone for Reborn on like Cat and done some stuff with that, but we don't really have the best thing to play into the Colossal. So I think it was probably best to do this. Yeah, I guess looking in the graveyard, there isn't really anything good to get back with Reborn in this turn. So yeah, I think the right play is the guard and the Oppression there. And pass back to them, see what they do. They are going to set 1, set another, pass back to us, choosing not to attack in that set. So that means that they might have like a Solemn Judgment or something set there. So I feel like that's a very, very convincing read. So I'm going to bait out the Solemn with the guard first, I believe. I need to do that. They do, use the Solemn. And now I can actually get popping with something like Arcanite, which I do think is the correct move to make here. So I math a bit, and I ultimately decide to go for Reborn on the guard because I need that Arcanite to pop the board. I could have gone like Cat into another 8, which is something I could have done if I wanted to. I don't really think it would have been the best for us, but it's something I could have done. But I think this is just the better play overall. Just getting that Arcanite into rotation. I'm bringing it on defense because I want to pop both, just in case they've got a Raikou. And unfortunately for us, it's a Sangan, so they do get to search off that. But we can just sort of turtle up behind this thing a little bit and pass back to our opponent. They are going to set one, set another pass back to us. We are going to draw here. We draw into a TT, which is pretty good. I just set that. If they got heavy, they got heavy. They probably win the game. Well, maybe they don't win the game because Spy can't really get much on its own. So, yeah, I'm just going to set the TT, see what they do. They're going to set one pass back to us. We're just sort of like waiting. We go for Minecon on that Spy, flip it up, bring out another Spy. So this is not lethal because we can't attack with the first Spy, but we can attack with our second one. And if they go for Mirror Force on this, then we pop their Spy as well. So I feel that's pretty good. We're also dropping them down to a point where they won't be able to use Oppression, where we will. So that's very good as well. I could have switched the Arcanite to attack just to, sort of hammer that point home. But then it's very, very vulnerable to what they've got. So I don't necessarily want to do that. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Pass back to them. They're going to set another. Go for Allure here. Blind Alluring to hopefully get something. They're going to banish a Monk. Set one. Switch the Spy Defense. Pass back to us. We draw Solemn, which is very good. We're going to switch our Spy Defense. They're going to MST our Solemn. That's fine by us. They're going to go for Allure here. Another blind draw. They're going to pitch those both. And then pass back to us. We draw Allure as well. We could blind Allure here, but I feel like we're sort of in the driver's seat right now, so we don't need to blind Allure. So we're just going to pass back to them. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Book of Moon, which could be good. We're going to set that, pass back to them. They're going to set that, pass back to us. We draw Monk. We do have Allure for this, so we can either go for Monk, pitch Allure, and then get some things out of deck. But we've gone through most of our cat targets. We do still have Airbellum and Raikou in next. So we actually could go for that as well. So I actually do debate that. But I instead decided to go for the Allure. I'm trying to draw into like, Heavy Storm plus a finisher. I think that might be a little bit better. Because like I want to sort of insulate my play when I can do it. So I summon out Valley here. Try and draw a little bit deeper. So I banish the Valley and the Arcanite. Draw into an Airbellum. Draw into Heavy Storm bottomless. And now I basically just win the game. Because if I can Heavy Storm the board. And that goes through. Then I can just make Dark Strike Fighter and win that way. So that's what I'm going to try and set up. They draw a card. We're going to go for heavy here. See if that's okay. They chain the Roar. And we are ultimately okay with that. So that'll just go through. And yeah, this will be the end of the game because we just bring out Airbellum, go for a Dark Strike, and treat that, and win. So yeah, I mean, that was the Swiss run. And that was kind of wild. I didn't even realize, like, going through it, that I never dropped a game. Like, not even one game in the matches themselves. Like, so that's kind of wild. It kind of shows the power of this deck. And this deck isn't perfect, as we'll see in my first game of the Top Cut. But it is very, very powerful. And it just gives you a lot of options a lot of the time. And it can just play through a lot of things as well. It's got a great grind game, too, due to the averages, which are very nice. And so, yeah, I think it's very, very good in this format. But let's dive into the last game here against Wagmuffin here. So let's see how this one goes. And this is the last one, so you can probably intuit how it goes. But we'll see exactly, what we might have done wrong. And see if we could have potentially gotten out of this by playing better. I'm going to go for Cat here first, going into Airbellum and the Raikou there just to sit on an Android. The reason I do this is I've got a Monk here, so I can make a Monk play next turn. I've got Reborn as well to bring some things back. So this gives me more options, more things engraved to potentially play with here for the next turn. And so I'm feeling actually pretty confident with this. I set the MST, just potentially snipe a backer that they might have in the end phase. And I feel this is pretty good. They go for Bora here. They spell summon at Gale, so Gale will have. I wasn't really expecting this magical android to survive anyways. But unfortunately, they go for Minecon on the android. So that's a potential reason not to play into things like Minecon or BrainCon. I still feel like this is fine because like I insulate my life points a little bit by going for the android play. And so I think it's ultimately okay, but like it definitely does come back to bite us here. They go for an 8 in the form of Stardust, and now they're able to attack in for 17 and 25. So we're not dead, which is the important thing. And I do feel like, again, with the insulation, there are very few actual ways that we would be dead here. Maybe if it was BrainCon instead of Minecon, but I'm also not going to like play around just a one of that, I feel like is the better play regardless of that one of. So, or other than that one of. They set one here. I think I probably should have, well, actually, I couldn't have blind MST because of the Stardust. So, yeah. So, that's why I didn't do that. And then standby, they do go for Dust Shoot here. They ultimately take the Monk. But I think makes some sense. But we still got a lot of plays here, so it's not the worst thing in the world for us here. We think a bit here about what to do. We could just go for a passive play like setting guard and just try and bounce back to Stardust. We can actually make an aggressive play to actually take a fair bit. And the play we actually settled on, I think, is the best play to do here. We target the cat, bring back that cat, and then we go for cat into an Airbellum and an Airbellum, because now we can Minecon the Bora as well. But first we're going to go for just something at the Panther, going to a 6 in the form of Goyo. And now we will Minecon the Bora. And now we're going to attack into the Stardust, take that Stardust, and then rip a card out of their hand. And then we can go for a level 7 in main phase 2, getting rid of the Bora as well. The reason we do this is because I don't want to risk running into a Kalut, which they might very well have. And I feel like this is a very, very resilient board. I've got 3 Synchro monsters on my field. Stardust is one of them. They'll have 1 card in hand here. And so I feel like this is just very, very good. I hit a Kalut, so I wasn't indeed correct about that assumption. Now I go into a 7 here, going into... I think about this bit, but I also decided to go into the Dark Strike Fighter. I could potentially tribute more on my board here, but I feel like this is, again, a very resilient board. It's very tough for them to out. If they go into a Blackwing plus Kalut, then that is annoying for us, but they ultimately deal with 1 threat, and then we can probably run over the other next turn. So I feel like this board is kind of almost unbeatable. There are things that do beat it, but I do think this is probably the best board that we can set up here. And a big part about these formats is like knowing what to go into, what not to go into. And I feel like this is kind of a good push. I feel like it's not too greedy of a push. Unfortunately for us, they do have 3 Darks Engrave. And they do have Dad. So Dad's just going to come down here. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, we can't really do anything about that. You know, this was actually in their hand last turn as well. So we missed the 50-50. But it could have just been drawn off the top as well, too. So Dad is one of the things that do kill us here. But to be fair, a very specific series of events has to happen there for them to get Dad off the play we made. We have to pitch a Dark, and also, you know, they have to have Dad, and Dad's a 1-of. So it's not the most likely thing in the world that that does happen. But unfortunately, it did happen for us. So now they'll attack over our Stardust, get rid of that, and now they can pop our whole board here. The good thing about this is that now they'll have no Dad fuel for later. So it means that we can set this guard, potentially bounce back the Dad, and, you know, potentially go from there. That's kind of our one hope right now. So we're going to set that guard, pass back to them, and hopefully they don't have any more gas to actually do stuff here. But Blackwings does have a fair amount of gas in this format. They've got a lure here as well to draw 2, banish 1, so they're going to banish Kalut. Go for Reborn here on our Goyo, which is pretty bad. And then they'll go for a Blizzard here. They don't have any cards Engrave, but they can just go for level 8, and then also get that Dark Engrave. So yeah, we will just lose this one. I think we did the right plays here. That's the thing. I think sometimes you can make the right plays and still end up losing. I think that isn't what happened there. You could argue, like, I shouldn't have gone for Android in the first turn, but again, I think that opens up my Reborn options for the following turn, so I think it is the correct play to make. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, that's Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like, there is some elements of chance involved, and I'm not trying to downplay Wagmon's plays there, because they were very good, but it is sort of like something where, like, I don't think necessarily this was the Rescue Cat deck's fault. I don't necessarily think this was, you know, the plays that I made's fault. I think it was just, you know, sometimes it turns out that way, right? And it's always good to acknowledge that when you're playing games. But anyways, we're going to go into game 2. And I think here I actually do make a misplay, which is good to highlight. So I'm going to go for Allure, draw 2, banish the Monk. That's not the misplay. I think that's fine, because I do have Airbellum. I do also have, like, Avarice that I want to start, like, getting online. So I want to try and figure out what to do there. I could have potentially saved the Monk. I think that is probably... yeah, I probably should have saved the Monk and just held the Allure. But I think it's still fine. I set the Mirror Force there, passed back to them. But yeah, I guess if I'd saved the Monk, things would have turned out differently. But anyway, they go for Whirlwind into a Bora, which they're actually not going to special summon out, which means that they probably don't have many other Blackwings in hand because they want to keep triggering that Whirlwind there. So that's good information to know. They set another pass back to us, and we draw into another Monk. So actually, it didn't matter with the Allure. But I still think it might have been better to save the Allure because now I would have been able to draw 2. Or actually, no, because I wouldn't be drawing a Monk right now. So I get lucky off the Allure. I think, in all honesty, I shouldn't have gone for the Allure first turn, but effectively, we got rewarded for it. We got rewarded for our greed, for making a bad play, and ultimately, we just gained cards for no cost, kind of, in terms of, like, looking at what this turn is mapping out to be. Anyways, we go for Minecon first. Why do we do this? Because they might have Icarus attack. So we don't necessarily want them to be able to Icarus attack when we set up our board. So we are going to go for Monk here. We're going to go for Monk, pitch a Braincon here because we have already used up their monster. So we don't really need the Braincon. What we might need is more extension on Avarice. So I think this is still the correct play. I think, honestly, if anything, we should have gone BrainCon instead of Minecon and then pitched the Minecon. But either way, effectively, it's a wash a little bit in terms of like evaluating, okay, would this play have made the difference in this game? I don't think it would have. So we do indeed bring in a cat here. And here is where I make the critical misplay. So what I do is I go for Airbellum plus Airbellum. I figure if they've got bottomless, I can just reborn the cat and then go from there. However, I have the third Airbellum in hand. And that makes it so that if they do have bottomless here, they're able to get rid of my Airbellums, and I won't actually have another tuner in deck to bring back with cat, right? And that is the big problem here, which they do indeed have the bottomless, so I will indeed get bottomless. I should have just played around bottomless more. Bottomless is a very common card in this format, and so I should have gone for like Airbellum plus either Panther or Ryko. I think probably Panther just get in for more damage if this does all connect. But yeah, either way, I messed up there. I got greedy. I was like, I can make 2 level 7s. Now I can't make any. But what would have happened here if I didn't do that, if I had gone for like Airbellum and Panther, for instance, is then after the bottomless, if they'd done it there, I could have gone for Reborn and brought something else back. Now they might have held the bottomless for later, for like when I go into a synchro play. But I think it might have been better just for them bottomless here, just to try and cut off the synchro play entirely, because then they get back their Shura. But yeah, if we had played this a little bit better, then we would have actually had the ability to actually go into another synchro play here, go into a 7 off their Shura after getting a hand rip here. And it would have been in a pretty good spot overall, I think. However, checking their hand, I think this ultimately would have turned out bad for us, because they've got Bora, they've got Gale, they've got BrainCon. They've got a lot of ways to sort of, play into what we have here. And I don't actually think we still would have had enough for an Avarice play here. Yeah, we would have had the 3 Beast Monsters engraved from the cat, but we would have gone for a single play with the Shura, not with the Summoner Monk. So we ultimately would not have enough for Avarice either. So it would have been a bit tricky here. But yeah, we did indeed make a misplay there. That did indeed cost us this game potentially. But they got smashing anyways. So what would have happened is they would have BrainCon whatever 7 we brought out, smashing our monster, go for Bora, spell summon Gale, and then just won that way. Because Bora plus Gale is going to be... Well, actually, you would even add a Kalute. Just go for it that way. So if you add all that up, that's 4,400. Plus whatever monster we bring out would definitely be enough to kill us there. So either way, we lose, given the hand that they've got here. Yeah, and there wasn't really a way to play around that. If I'd gone for Arcanite to pop the, like, Whirlwind, I guess I could have gone for Arcanite in the first place, just to try and pop the, like, Whirlwind Shura and just have it that way. But again, they've got Smashing, and they've got BrainCon for follow-up later. They can just go Bora, Gale, attack him for 3,000, then go into 7 Synchro, like Armor Master, and then they've got the BrainCon and take whatever I would do later. So I think we were probably losing this one no matter how we played it. And I think the plays that we made besides the bottomless play were still, like, pretty good. So I do think this was just, like, I never want to say any game's unwinnable, but I think that there wasn't a world in which we were winning this. But yeah, they just go for searching out the Kalute off the Whirlwind. They've got Gale, they've got BrainCon, they've got a lot of stuff here. They can even go for the Summoner Rock effect, pitching the Smashing around to go for something if they wanted to. But this is already lethal with the Kalute there. So yeah, it's going to be the end of the game there. So rough stuff. But again, that's Yu-Gi-Oh! For you. Some games are just not yours to win, and that does happen sometimes. Ultimately, I'm very happy with the performance of this deck overall in the tournament, because, we did go undefeated in Swiss, which is very impressive, and I think the deck is very good. Out of the top 4 cut that was there, 2 of them were Rescue Cat decks, so the deck definitely does have legs in this format, even though it has been a little bit slept on, because people have discovered Blackwings and been like, oh yeah, Blackwings is crazy good in Edson, really, really good here because you got triple Gale. But I do think that, the deck is not unbeatable, and the deck is definitely tier 1, but I think Cat's definitely also tier 1 up there, and Gladbeast also tier 1 because that did win the event, and it is very strong. So I'll be showing off all these decks on the channel. Hopefully you enjoyed this showcase of Cat. But if you want to play this format for yourself, head over to the YGFrom0 Discord server, links in the description down below. And also, if you want to play it for yourself, just know this is the type of format that people can find frustrating because it is very sacky. Like, a lot of the wins I had were through sack, right? The game 1 here, I think, was also kind of like a sacky game on the part of my opponent, right? Games are won by sack. That doesn't necessarily mean they're not fun, and it's just the nature of the game, right? Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game that does rely on some variance, and sacking will happen. So, go into it with a sort of not too, like, serious mindset, and I think you'll have a good time. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think about the format and the deck down in the comments below. I'll try and get to them soon, but I've been I've been a bit busy, so I haven't been able to get into as many comments as I'd like to on recent videos. If you want to, support the channel, definitely like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. If you want to support it directly, I've got a Patreon link in the description down below. And if you join the Patreon, you get shouted in videos. Big shouts to Rinswin, Pork Chicken, Brent Knocker, Tyler Compton, GeoMyFS, Dumbtruck, and Scout Zero, and Damon Hass. It means a lot that you'll support me today and could make more videos like this one in the future. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed as always. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero. I'm signing off. Peace.